So Jeff obviously is planner, and then Grace and Dakota. I was quickly.
You want to start with the PowerPoint?
Yeah, you could get that because I did make some tweaks.
Hi, everyone. For those on the phone, I'm Mallory. I'm the vice chair. I'll just kick things off. We're just pulling up presentations, and then I think Phil, you'll be taking over.
Yeah.
Great.
Sound very well. That's very well. So, no.
John is saying the audio is kind of in and out. So we need to just enunciate toward the owl. As much as we can.
How's this, John? If I speak like this, can you hear me?
Got his camera up.
Yeah, that sounds better, Phil.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Grace.
All set? Think so. Great.
Put it on the presentation. So it's a little bit bigger.
The top, maybe the slide, there's a slideshow. Okay.
There, okay.
This word, or would you like?
That's perfect. No, that's perfect.
All right, go ahead.
Oh, should I just jump right in?
Yeah, go ahead. We're here tonight for an active transportation committee workshop, community workshop. And I'll get over to Phil to get things going. So Paul and Sam have been quite involved in this process for a little bit. I was for a while. And we're here today to get some community feedback.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for having me here. It's an honor to be in front of the town council. My name is Phil Goff. I'm a senior active transportation planner with BHP. I am in our Watertown, Massachusetts office, but I've been working closely with folks, including Grace, who is on the call taking notes, or on Zoom taking notes today. And others in the South Portland office, and we've been working on this for the past year, roughly. And we have now a draft final report, which perhaps you and Liz have had an opportunity to take a look at. So I have about a 15 or 20-ish minute presentation summarizing actually, you can go to the next slide. So I'll talk a little bit about an overview of the planning process, what we've gone through over the last 10, 11 or 12 months. Talk about the project recommendations made, and I'll give a quick overview of some of the conceptual design and demonstration projects, and then a conclusion. And that second to last bullet, our scope of work did include choosing up to 3 of the high priority projects to put to develop in a little bit higher level of detail and to develop as potential demonstration projects as well, which we'll get into in just a minute. Thanks, Son. So just to summarize the outreach and engagement, as you, Mallory, had mentioned earlier, we did have meetings with the project steering committee that did include Paul Schumacher and Sam Blickstrom as members of that committee, and of course we were on it for a while as well. So we had the town council members, we had other town staff involved. We had representatives from Southern Maine Planning and Development Commission and Maine DOT, who I know Maine DOT Dakota is on Zoom. And we have SMPDC representatives here in the audience as well. And we had some South Berwick residents as part of that committee. meeting every other month and helping to guide the project along, extremely valuable input throughout. We've had input on a few occasions, other than tonight, we did an outreach at the Harvest Festival last October, had a public meeting in November as well, and we've had a project website and information provided throughout the process. So people were able to access draft materials and keep abreast of the project. So. What we did an existing conditions assessment. I'm just going to kind of really quickly go through the process other than the public engagement. That assessment included the review and the summary of existing town and regional plans and studies and reports with an active transportation plan like this with a focus on pedestrian and bicycle based improvements. We don't want to start from scratch. We want to pick up on other recommendations that have been made over the years. So we did look at a handful of different reports. We collected a lot of data with the traffic speeds, land use, traffic counts, crashes as well, and identifying those crash locations that involve pedestrians and bicyclists is an important part of active transportation planning to get a sense if there may be some hotspots, crash hotspots in a particular community, and to address those appropriately with improvements. We did different analyses of the roadway network. We looked at levels of traffic stress of the whole roadway network, both state and local roads in South Berwick, and a gap analysis that looked at sidewalks, paths, and other bike-friendly roadways, and tried to understand where there are gaps in the entire network. And there are a number of them, and that helps to inform, of course, the project recommendations. Next slide. Our report includes a high-level toolkit. This isn't like design guidelines. It's not intended to replace any federal or state-related guidelines, but it's just sort of give a sense of what sort of the rough toolkit of recommendations that the report does provide to improve safety and access for walking, bicycling, and rolling within South Berwick. So obviously there's sidewalks, new and improved crosswalks, and then safety countermeasures at those crosswalks and/or with traffic calming facilities such as raised crosswalks, speed tables, bump outs, refuge islands, flashing beacons, some images you see there of what those elements look like. And we do have particular recommendations, throughout the town, though we not a level of detail where, we specifically created a design for every single one, but just sort of a general high level recommendation. Next slide. And then from a bicycle improvement point of view, there are some bike lane recommendations, both standard and separated bike lanes or buffered bike lanes with extra striped areas for buffers that you see in the images, some intersection improvements, and of course there's a handful of shared path and trail recommendations as well on that side. So in total, with the analysis and the existing conditions assessment we did develop a 64 recommendations. You can see how they're broken down with 18 path and trail related recommendations, one kind of major bike lane related project recommendation, traffic calming in more of the in-town streets. There's 11 recommendations related to traffic calming on more neighborhood and urban streets, and then 7 of the rural roadways where we make recommendations for traffic calming. It's a little trickier in rural roadways, but we do have a section on that. 3 intersection improvements, and then we have 11 locations where we recommend new sidewalks and 13 locations for either new or improving the existing so 64 total. Next slide. And then next slide. And the key thing with developing, a plan like this with dozens of recommendations is to come up with some type of prioritization for the town. So you have a sense of how to phase the implementation of the project. So helping us to understand how to prioritize the projects, we develop evaluation criteria. The evaluation criteria comes directly from the project goals that we worked with the project steering committee early on to develop the 7 goals, not just with the steering committee, but these are draft goals. They were 8 at one point, they came down to 7. They were presented also at the public meeting and at the pop-ups we had at the Harvest Festival. We did dot exercises to give people the opportunity to weigh in on those. And part of weighing in on the draft project goals is not just to see if perhaps we needed some rewording of those goals, but to understand what the community and the committee's priorities were of those goals themselves, because that helps to inform decisions about whether we want to weight any of those goals as they become evaluation criteria. And as you can see that safety and comfort and then connectivity were deemed to be the 2 kind of highest priorities within that prioritization criteria. And then for point totals for each of those, that impacts the point total for the scoring for each of the individual projects. So 60 points total. Some of these are more quantitative assessment, it's sort of GIS analysis to give us a score based on the data, and then others are a little more qualitative. We're kind of using a little bit more subjectivity in terms of like, design and phase of opportunity in order to provide a score. But 60 points total. Next slide. And we have, a table of recommendations. I know you can't read it. It is in the report, of course. Basically in order of ranking. You can see the projects that are identified in the map, and the 20 highest were circled in purple. Clearly many of them are more in the developed downtown part of South Berwick. Next slide. That zooms in a little on that. So the top 20 highest scoring projects range from a score of 56 was the highest scoring project, which was pedestrian and bicycle related improvements on Portland Street, just outside of town. And then 42, so the top 20 were basically in 42 and up. And this isn't to say that these will be the first 20 projects or the only 20 projects implemented, and that the other 44 projects are not worthy, because many of them are. And many of those may ultimately be implemented, and sometimes lower scoring mid-range projects or lower scoring projects do get implemented earlier than higher scoring projects, just because they get plugged into roadway projects that may already have funding. There might be a repaving project, etc., and might be more efficient to do it that way. But in terms of the process and of scoring, these were the 20 high scoring projects. You get a sense of how they're distributed, again, mostly downtown, with a few along the east edge of town as well. Next slide. And I just want to highlight a couple of projects or initiatives that are important ones that didn't necessarily make it in the top 20, but I know that there's certainly interest and likely some momentum to do some improvements as part of these projects. One is the Eastern Trail off-road route. Again, didn't make it into the top 20, but they're just below. This was broken into 3 segments along the CMP and the Unitil utility corridor. This came out of SNPDC's Eastern Trail off-road route study I was also involved with a year and a half ago or so. So this is something that ultimately the Eastern Trail, which right now runs right through town as an on-road shared bike facility. Ultimately, both the Eastern Trail and the East Coast Greenway, and I think Maine DOT and SNPDC and many of the communities along the way would like to ultimately see an off-road route. So I just wanted to highlight this, just so sort of for the record here, for community members and others to just know that this is an important project, and there is some momentum that has already been created through this other planning effort to make this happen. And just a couple images of what that may look like in different parts of town. Next, the other one I wanted to highlight was the traffic calming on rural roadways. I know that this was an important part of our process. It came up a lot, both with the committee and at the public meeting as well. the desire to have some improvements, some way of improving conditions for mostly bicyclists out in rural roadways, those who are out there riding recreationally now, or perhaps in the future, or who may want to use those roadways more for transportation, bicycling as well. A lot of those are narrow roadways, but we do have and it's sort of tricky to make those really comfortable. And the expense of widening them or putting in side paths or sidewalks is typically prohibitive. But we do have a section that includes for a number of roads such as Bennett Lot Road, Emery's Bridge, Nice Pond, Witch Trot, and Oldfield Road. We have kind of a toolkit of different potential traffic calming measures that could be instituted along those roadways. Some of those are mostly town roadways. I think a couple of those are state main DOT roadways as well, but I think these are ideas that could potentially be incorporated elsewhere. So again, just wanted to highlight a couple of those that didn't make it into the top 20. Next slide. Okay, as I mentioned, part of our scope of work was to work with the project steering committee, identify three of the not the three highest scoring projects, but three at least relatively well scoring projects that could really have a lot of bang for the buck, that could really help to improve walking and biking in a pretty significant way throughout town. So we have three projects that I'll show you the kind of conceptual design graphics for. And then also we were scoped to choose three projects in order to provide some plans to do as short-term, low-cost demonstration projects, which you'll see as well. Next slide. So the first one, this one did happen to be the highest scoring. So this was bike lanes and additional pedestrian crosswalk improvements and traffic calming as well. But we're just kind of branding it here as the Portland Street bike lanes. So this is, a project goal of trying to provide a space for bicyclists and to slow motor vehicle traffic on the portion of Portland Street, as you pass Agamenticus Road and come into town. Slow down traffic, make it more pedestrian friendly, make it more bike friendly, create a more welcoming environment, really for all the motors coming into South Berwick. And we know, of course, that there is Maine DOT's project at the Portland Road Main Street intersection, which we can consider as, for all intents and purposes, an existing condition. So you can see in the graphic there, looking at the parking, which right now is allowed on both sides, relatively low demand, just based on what we've heard, discussions with the committee. And knowing that those houses have driveways, this is suggesting restricting parking onto one side and providing space for more generous bike facilities. You can see in the section. Next slide. So we kind of lay this out in plan. This, I know it's highly detailed, and it's hard to see at this level, but at some point, hopefully you'll have the opportunity to look at these more closely. We have the graphics you can see in the map at the far right. We have three plan graphics that kind of show you at a higher level of detail how that bike lane would be striped along Portland Street. At the far left of the larger graphic, that's the Main Street intersection. So we kind of have this design plugged into Maine DOT's design for that intersection and for the block, in essence, between Maine and Coldport. Coldport, we're showing an enhanced crosswalk with bump outs. And then from there, we have bike lanes. Oh,
I can't answer on the screen after.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, never mind, it doesn't work.
Okay. Yep, that little green smudge in the middle, that's where the crosswalk.
I'm sorry.
Okay, great. So you can see that there's bump outs at the crosswalk to make that a safer crossing, and from there to the north or to the right. Parking is then shown, the parking spaces were striped to be just on one side, but we designed this so that they would switch every other block. In essence, they would switch from the east side to the west side and vice versa. We try to be strategic about that, so we're sort of maximizing where we think parking might be a little more needed. But that also provides a traffic calming device as well, because the roadway center line and the lanes are kind of shifting back and forth, so that that offset does discourage or it encourages a little bit slower speeds as they go along.
Phil, sorry, just a question.
yeah.
What is it that is, kind of alternating from side to side? Is that parking space?
The parking, the curbside parking,
Okay,
on-street parking, you can see in that in this lot to the north of Colcord, it is on the south side.
gotcha, okay.
And then as you move to the next, so it's on the south, or is that the south side? No, that's the east side. There, okay, next slide, and then as you kind of move to the next section that's focused on Highland Ave, you can see now that the at the Highland Ave intersection and the crosswalk, which we've enhanced with sort of traffic calming element, then the parking switches to, you can see at the far left, it's on the east side, you can see one of those parkings. We're just showing the square of the box in the parking space, and then it switches to the other side. In this case, we recommend the crosswalk gets shifted a little bit with the bump out to make that a safer crossing. As well, you can see the buffered bike lanes that are shown.
But the bike lanes are continued on both sides.
They're on both sides. It's just striping. We're not showing any barriers or anything here. That it is an option for the town to include barriers ultimately. But you can see where the parking shifts from one side to the other, you get what, in transportation planning terms, it's called a chicane, where the roadway sort of horizontally kind of shifts, and that kind of creates a slow point for cars. Next slide, and then we kind of chase it out further north. Actually, one thing I wanted to say before I get to the next one. So in this section, focused on Highland Ave, this is where just this section, not the entire 2,000 foot long stretch. Stay right there.
Sorry.
You go, zoom in. So in this stretch would just be a 400 or 500 foot stretch where we feel this could be a potential demonstration project. Again, low cost, just striping, could be a community based effort. DOT is supportive of these if done well and designed well. And it's a community initiated and town supported type of project, so that's something for consideration. So we show how that would be laid out as a low cost, short-term demonstration project to give people a sense of what that might look like and feel like. To have that bike lane and improved pedestrian crossing and ideally, so a little bit of slower traffic there as well. Okay, so that's a lower side, and then the next slide then kind of chases out, and now we're going back to the more kind of longer term concept level design. We bring this up to the Agamenticus Road intersection. We show an additional crosswalk and bump out leading to a sidewalk at Jewett Ave as a crossing, so that would be kind of an entry point. We do have a note there that does suggest that some other traffic calming elements to be looked at, potentially in signage further north. But then as people are coming, drivers are coming in, they kind of reach the Jewett Ave crossing, where that's more of a gateway type of location. And you can see the bike lane would then, in essence, in this concept of design, would then bring you to Agamenticus Road and provide connections to some of the amenities, the recreation complex, etc. down Agamenticus Road. So it's not to say that bicycling couldn't be improved further north. There is certainly the shoulder that's already there. But in terms of a formalized striped bike lane, that's in terms of this concept level project, it ends there. Okay, next slide. So the second concept level design, we looked at Lower Main Street. And this is really about creating a series of improvements at the crossing locations, both existing and where there's really demand for pedestrian crossing for new crosswalks. So when you can go a little to the left. Yeah, starting basically at the bridge over the river at the far left. That's the Lane Hill, show one new crosswalk there and median islands, again, as a visual, and physical pinch point for cars as a traffic calming element. And then moving to the east, that High Street, we show a relocated crosswalk with bump outs. Just better geometry and drainage to have that crosswalk move to the east just a bit. Keep going. And we have, the next sheet, and then the next sheet, then we have another crosswalk with bump outs, another kind of visual pinch point, to slow cars. And then after Webster Street, we think that could be a good area as people are approaching Maine, we're wanting to potentially slow down even more, a raised crosswalk or a speed table. Potentially in that location where there is an existing crosswalk. That to be enhanced, potentially raised. And then sort of the furthest east, then we're showing the next slide. We show that the project could terminate with a small kind of parklet, potential parklet, a small kind of parklet facility, the potential closure of that right turn slip lane. Or not, it's not right one, but it is kind of a slip lane for eastbound motor vehicles to turn either right or left on Main Street. There's enough space potentially to widen out the throat of that roadway and have both directions of traffic kind of squaring up into Main Street as more of a 90-degree intersection that provides an opportunity for an extended sidewalk rather than a big long crosswalk along the edge of Main Street, and then potentially some kind of small park space at the end. And then we also feel that, next slide, this could be another potential demonstration project. So we lay out what that could look like as a demonstration project, where you're just using, again, low cost materials, some paint, some planters. Ideally putting out seating and maybe cafe tables. This would be a seasonal thing, maybe only for a few weeks. But again, give the sort of a taste of what that may look like and feel like. Ultimately, if it's ever kind of permanently changed, according to some of the concept level plans and ideas that we next slide. And then the third concept level design project is just over on this road, Norton Street. We did hear concerns about both speeding and cut through traffic on Norton Street as something that's problematic. The cut through traffic happening primarily in the southbound direction, motorists coming into town, taking your right, I forget which side street, but heading over to Norton to access Main Street without getting to the big intersection that ultimately will be included with a new signal, but for the meantime, and certainly during construction, that's going to be a place of traffic queuing for sure. But to limit that cut through traffic and to slow down traffic, what we're suggesting here is for the block between Main and Railroad Ave, that could be made as a one-way street. One way for motor vehicles going northbound, but then a big wide area for both southbound emergency vehicles and bicycles and pedestrians, of course, to kind of walk, or not pedestrians in the road, there's already a sidewalk there. But bicycles and emergency vehicles, potentially even utility maintenance vehicles as well, possibly, to have the opportunity to go in both directions, of course, simply because of the presence of the fire station. So we wanted to suggest making that a one-way street, and then we're advocating for what we call speed cushions. If we go to the next slide, you get an image. Need to be very sensitive about trying to slow traffic on the roadway next to a fire station or hospital is not so easy, but there are certainly ways to do it. And the suggestion is that we're showing here. In this concept level design is to consider speed cushions and those rather than a speed hump that goes basically end to end across the whole street. They have these cushions that create these gaps for wider wheel-based vehicles can get through with minimal slowing down, but for a typical automobile, SUV pickup truck, they don't quite have that with such a wide wheelbase, so it acts as a traffic calming measure. So fire department, fire chief certainly is gonna wanna weigh in on this in a major way. And there's a lot of discussion, but this is at least one way potentially to slow down traffic, especially with the one-way feature on the south block on the approach to Main Street as diverting some of that cut-through traffic as well, but still allow fire trucks and other emergency vehicles to run through there. Next slide, and then the third demonstration project, not associated with any of the three concept level design projects, like the other two demonstration projects, but this demonstration project C, we looked at an opportunity to potentially improve, create a better pedestrian crossing and improved access to the Great Wood School. We have heard anecdotally that there are children on the other side of Route 236 that are actually crossing at Vine Street, just kind of dashing across, using the little path that's over there. So we thought a good potential demonstration project, obviously with a lot of coordination with Maine DOT, is to provide a temporary crosswalk and speed table or speed humps on the approaches to that crosswalk. Lowering the speed limit to 30 on the approaches on both sides, potentially. And a few other elements, little pieces of sidewalk that might be delineated just with posts in the short term, but ultimately could be sidewalks longer term. So this is something that we feel with coordination with DOT and some additional engineering could be a great demonstration project in order to both slow traffic and provide an opportunity for safer pedestrian crossing for the school kids and any others, any other residents who feel the need to cross 236.
Could you zoom in on that a little bit, just for better context?
Sure. Yeah, and you can see there is the existing island that is there. And which provides a refuge. So any pedestrian crossing there, there isn't the need necessarily to have to negotiate and find the gap with both directions of traffic. We could have that refuge in the center of the road, surrounded by delineator posts, just as an additional traffic calming, visual traffic calming element. And then this crosswalk, when it's oriented like that, it's called a Z crossing. So that if you're following that crosswalk, you're always turning 90 degrees and facing traffic before you make the next crossing. To improve safety rather than just making going all the way across both directions of traffic in a single line. That's a pedestrian Z crossing as well. And we know that there are examples of temporary speed humps like this on other state roadways. There's one in Saco on Route 1, actually next to the Thornton Academy, is a good example of a traffic calming project on a state roadway that the town worked with Maine DOT to have that approved. So we know there's some precedent, so we think that there's good outlook.
And those are linked in the plan, in the PDF.
Yes,
So
the
just
plan
links
includes.
to like Google View and some pictures of those.
Yep. And then next slide, just kind of summarizing what the demonstration projects, really the goals of these projects, as I kind of alluded to, I think already verbally, is like, these are temporary low cost elements. The intent is really to test out pedestrian and bike infrastructure improvements. And when it's out there for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it may be, there's the opportunity to at least do some level of evaluation, maybe count pedestrians, count bicyclists, using it, et cetera. Depending on the type of project, the sort of painting shoulders like is shown in that image from the west end. In Portland, that's probably not gonna happen on 236, but perhaps that's sort of an image of what the east end of, say, Lower Main Street could be, some kind of community project where you're putting paint on the roadway potentially. And then making that a little more of a lively space. And it's really just, to allow residents to experience what the changes may look and feel like without necessarily committing a lot of funding and resources into making it happen. There are, Maine DOT, there's a memorandum that sort of formally outlines some potential steps in the process for making this happen, with Maine DOT. There are some grants available, to help make these happen as well, so it's something ongoing that the town, could be looking into. And then last slide, just to kind of conclude, this kind of comes out of the conclusion and implementation sort of section at the very end of the plan and just some next steps. Potential adoption of the plan itself by the town council, something more formal. Public Works at some point to review the recommendations and really highlight the ones that may be coinciding with either current or future roadway paving repair projects, so you get the bang for the buck and you're making the improvements without necessarily finding extra funding. That's all being done as a coordinated project. Start maybe setting a meeting with Maine DOT to discuss improvements, not just the longer term, but some of the demonstration type improvements as well. Having a town staffer, planning department or public works commit some portion of their time to helping to implement the plan. And then, with a plan like this outlining improvements in additional sidewalks, crosswalks, trails, bike lanes, etc., there's the need to maintain those. So that's something that will need to be considered by the town council as potential increases in funding just for maintenance in the law. There's some other next steps in the report as well, just thought I'd highlight these. And now I'm happy to open it up to questions on the next slide from town council or community members who are here. Thank you very much and really enjoyed working on this project and looking forward to developing the final plan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Any questions? I have a question.
Sure.
My question was, I heard you mention at the beginning the traffic light. Did you, so they say, imagine that the traffic light will be there at Centertown where Fulton Street intersects?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
When is that actually getting built?
There's a, well, to speak to that. It really, I mean, it's a very expensive, $4 million of funding right now, we've heard it, what the state's dealing with, they're at $130 million shortfall. And if you know anything that's going on in the federal government, it's probably very unlikely that a transportation authorization bill will happen this session because it's an election year. So, but like those unknowns, we just are gonna assume there's gonna be a delay. Susan Collins did put an earmark in the appropriations bill for funding for this. But that appropriations bill isn't going anywhere right now, they're not, the Senate's not actually doing anything with it. But if it were to go through with, by some miracle, they do end up doing it, and maybe other senators decide they don't want their earmarks to go through, then that could go through, and you could have guaranteed funding, and you would know by September 30th when the federal authorizations, their appropriations they go through, but without that September 30th deadline, then you're talking about the next legislation, and then whether it's earmarked or whether it's a federal grant would depend on other things, and a few years out before you probably really know. But at this point, if that additional one came through, you could be looking at the construction of 2028 or 2029. So
I think we discussed having that an agenda item at soon.
we had a
Town
meeting
meeting,
on the
town council meeting.
Yeah, we booked a meeting with them, maybe a few of the project manager on July 14th, that's something.
Which I think is the day of our next
Yeah.
council meeting,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
should have a little bit of that.
The engineering and design is moving forward, maybe it's paid for that, so that is going forward. It's the construction funding, the big pot of money that is on right now.
I know. Makes sense. Thank you.
I think, my own personal feeling is like, we have like a lot of really good ideas and recommendations here, we should not be waiting for the traffic light project to sort of. Appear.
Yeah.
What we have designed on Portland Street does not depend on.
Right, but it,
It assumes at some point it would be there.
Right.
The plan does show it kind of plugging in the average.
What about the Norton,
That's what I say, I think.
the Norton Street project is, sorry, is that one a conceptual or a demonstration?
Norton was a conceptual.
Okay,
You could make it that,
It
you could,
it could,
it's a town road, so you have a lot more freedom to
Yeah.
make it.
Yeah.
demonstration.
it could be a
But
demonstration.
that one with the signal, you really have to think about the impacts of making
exactly.
it a one-way without the signal. But I think part of the reason to make it a one-way was because it is a cut through, so there were people, or say people heading through, so if you made it a one-way. All those cut through traffic, you'd just be adding into the queue that's waiting to turn as is without a signal.
Yeah, I was curious like what the perspective was from the committee on like. Is that project better served pre or post signal, the Norton Street one, and then also like, how would we navigate? Like, the change management of that, because, you know, that obviously would be a huge change for people that are used to cutting through, and so like, what is the. Recommended sort of like plan of like, how do we get it out there that, hey, FYI, at some point in the future, Norton Street's gonna be one way, it's gonna be very different, you know, how do we? Phase into that, so people are aware.
Definitely need to be a communications plan, and there's a lot that would go into it beyond just the conceptual design.
Yeah.
We would probably wanna do some traffic data collection before, maybe not modeling, but maybe almost like a very high level, is this gonna be a huge issue? Just seeing when the traffic is and how many, it might not be as many cars as you think, it might be fine. A good example of a road that went into a one-way road that was technically kind of a demonstration in Kittery was I think it's Love Lane.
Okay,
They turned it into a one-way, and I think everyone thought everyone was gonna fight it, and afterwards, the whole neighborhood and everybody loved it, and the people that lived on the street were. They were like, we wanna keep it a one-way, so. You never know, but this one could be touchier, and it might affect more people that live in Berwick. I don't know, or like, I don't know who cuts through, it seems to be that it's if you're going, or
Plus during, well.
yeah.
That's what I'm trying to see.
Yeah.
To add on to that.
Yeah,
Yeah, and if we're talking demonstrations or ideas for Norton Street, which as we know is a cut through. Now, the cut through that I wanna speak to is Sewall to Parent Street to Young, which is people trying to avoid the main drag. When it gets back up to 236 and they cut through that neighborhood, which is my neighborhood. And they can go faster. They can go faster than they can get on Norton Street. I bet you if you did your metrics on average speed on people cutting through, it's gonna be faster on those roads. Because Young's huge. We got people hitting like 45 on that thing. And we have kids out the wazoo now. It's not the same neighborhood it was 10 years ago. And so,
24 kids. That section he just mentioned is 24 kids.
and
it's on that block.
No, it's 3 streets.
Oh, that's 3 Street.
And so, I don't know who's a parent or not, but knowing your kid can get out your door on a bicycle, and like, I want my kids on my bike, I like seeing the kids in the yards. But I can't train them on a strike in my backyard. And so if we're gonna look toward maybe a demonstration, or if we're gonna look toward, I know it didn't make the metrics for like a top priority job. Because like connectivity is already there, economic impact, it doesn't have any. But it keeps the kids safe, and there are elderly that walk those streets.
Teachers.
Well, because I get to sit out in my yard and be a community member, which is great, part of the joy of living in South Berwick. But when you hear that car whipping up the street at 4:15 on the dot, I can throw my hands up so many times. And they don't care, because they're trying to bypass, they're inherently trying to save time, and they're gonna speed. And so that street for speed humps, or however you said, calming traffic, needs to be prioritized for the safety of the community. And that's why I wanna make, I know we're on the backside of Maine, but there's a lot of traffic just as much as Northern, and it's faster.
And it comes from both sides.
Yeah.
I was on, yeah.
Seawall or Young Street?
It comes from Seawall to Young Street, to
They whip
the Parent Street, Young Street, and they come from Young Street to Parent Street to Seawall Street. They come both ways. And they come around the corner sometimes and like, because there's a section that there's only enough for one car to go through.
There's been a lot of almost accidents head-on related.
So-
Seen it.
Well, you live in that area.
Yeah.
Recommendations on those streets were the speed humps and then stop signs at those hard 90s. I know there's one at Sewell.
Is there already
Yeah,
a bump?
But
No,
no,
It goes from 60 all.
I know things cost money, but the thing that costs less is bringing it down to like 15 miles an hour. To make people slow down, and if they don't have a cop sit there, just pound and pound and pound them, you know what I mean, and bring that income come in from their speed tickets, you know?
And in Britain, they call speed humps sleeping policemen. Because
Well, I'm just saying,
if you put up the sign and
Well,
the police are gonna pull people over. Generally, the experience is it doesn't have that much impact,
Correct.
but a speed hump as a sleeping policeman come in. Can actually make it, so it's not that it's a bad idea to.
No, yeah.
Law enforcement that there should be, but it doesn't.
It was
usually
just more of a fallback if we can't get for money wise, because I know it
Sure.
costs money for the speed bumps, they cost a lot of money, you know what I mean?
yeah, I know in talking with the director of public works last week, Parent Street's on the repaving list for either this or next year, so I think just like
Yeah.
Phil was saying, like, this is why I think there needs to be an implementation team for this plan. So I think the next steps after, if the town council chooses to adopt the plan, is to start looking at it and figuring out how the heck are we going to actually do it, and what does make, we have this nice priority list, and I think it helped the committee figure out, for VHB's contract, what should be the concept and demo projects that they developed, because that was part of their contract to do that, so that prioritization sort of led those choices. But like Phil also says, that doesn't mean that even, say Parent, Sewell, Neely, Young is like number 40, it's not to say it doesn't jump up in the implementation phase, so to speak. For example, because Parent's going to get paid for the next couple of years.
Well, so I think it's important to note that, what a lot of the projects, or maybe all, need DOT involvement because they're on. I mean, as far as demonstration projects, except for.
None of the ones that are on local roads need.
Right, exactly,
Which is all of those streets.
but,
and
well, Portland. I mean,
But Portland Street,
Portland,
Yeah.
236,
yeah.
Portland and
Lower Main
Lower Main,
School.
and 236.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have, I think it's, that will require, massive DOT involvement, but we also have the opportunity to do our
Yeah,
own.
for sure.
Well, that's great, because to say, yeah, well, if we get paid in 2 years, maybe that'd be a good time to do it. That's 2 years of me watching my kid out in my front yard, capable of chasing a ball, and guys going 40 miles an hour down Parent Street, Young Street, Sewell. So I love the idea of happening and rolling into a potential project, but I want to impress upon everybody here the urgency that we feel in this community for these streets to be made safer for our children.
And
I agree,
we could demonstrate something like speed cushions on those roads.
That'd be dope.
Anything we just
Yeah.
mentioned for Norton, you could install them on one of those, in those neighborhoods and test them out.
Let's do it.
People, and to purchase them, there's grants available through DOT, and I mean, there's ways to get them, I don't think they're huge expenses, I think it'd be more expensive to pay for a cop constantly enforcing the law. And then people just say, not speeding when there's no cop, it's probably more cost effective to put something like a speed cushion in. And then, changing the speed limit isn't necessarily, doesn't really do much, so. The physical infrastructure is the way to go.
So Chris, what you're saying is you're interested in being on the implementation team for this plan.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
Absolutely. You know what I look at? I invite everybody to come and sit with me at 4:30 and watch the tap, and you will be on board.
Well, I mean, I would like to say, we had a meeting, I don't know, a month ago about Willow Drive, speed bumps, and there was a lot of pushback on speed bumps, at the time, about people. Not happy, but they didn't want speed bumps, they don't want, so, I mean, there is, but I certainly hear what you're saying, I mean, I. At some point, you need to make a decision on, like, okay, if people are serious about wanting to reduce speed.
Which we seem to be.
And there is no perfect solution, other than, maybe that is the perfect solution, I don't know. A speed cushion or what's the difference between a speed cushion and a speed
The
bump?
cushion allows a wider exit vehicle to pass through without having to slow down.
Yeah,
But,
the speed hump basically goes the width of the street.
okay,
It doesn't have a notch for the actual width of a large vehicle.
And there's like the temporary type speed.
Yeah, there's
bumps that-
temporary and there's permanent.
Yeah. And I think the speed cushions are typically temporary, or when there's not.
and then there's a raised crosswalk, which is,
That's different too. Yeah, I mean, that's just a wider speed bump that has a cross, wide enough that you have a crosswalk. So,
Speed table.
yeah, or a speed table is synonymous with the raised crosswalk.
I have a similar concern for the crosswalk that's at, I guess it's Norton crossing Main Street. Where it turned like right up here.
Oh, at the end. there.
Yeah, so there is a crosswalk there that a lot of kids use that, but that's the only one, and people don't really. I'm always like telling my kids, like, they should look into their eyeballs,
Yeah.
because they assume, I mean, there's no lights there are lights down at the post office one.
Yeah,
But you have to cross over and there's no sidewalk by the post office, so, or coming up this side of the post office, so is there any plan to make that more of like a raised crosswalk?
is that one of the crosswalks that DOT's plan includes improvements?
It's in between the Route 4 and Route 36, the two signalized. The intersection's like gonna be signalized.
No, she's saying closer.
It's just at the end of this.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought, yeah, and
I
here's
thought
asking.
DOT's plan did include
It does,
crosswalk
Yeah,
improvements
we're gonna.
next to the crosswalk close to.
that's like the permanence of the project,
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
include that, includes bump outs to that
So,
crosswalk.
So not a raised crosswalk, but
Right
some
now,
other kind.
right
Yeah.
now, it doesn't have the flashers, is that what you?
No, it doesn't have
Lights.
flashers, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I just.
And we might not have recommended anything because we're assuming it's part of
It's
the,
part of the DOT project.
but you could potentially put two and be there before, especially. After
Yep.
September 30th, and you know for sure that you're not gonna, and well,
But also another concern, so I appreciate all the like slowing traffic down coming in, but I think one concern for this big intersection in town. Is that people have been backed up and slow, especially in the summer, for so long. They're angry and making all kinds of crazy turns, like a lot of times we'll go out to leave friends and sit in the window and just like watch. Car accidents almost happen, it's like pretty frustrating that project is gonna be so slow, is there any like mitigation that can happen before that, like? I don't know, I mean, I understand it's DOT, but maybe once something there could be a demo project.
Yeah, I mean. All those are options, you know, we've only done our scope of work, that's what, is part of this plan, but that's not to say that. In implementation of this plan after it's adopted, if it gets adopted, that. You know, there could be a slight change of direction and go out another project or two. We already heard about one, maybe that would make more sense as a electrification project on Carrot Street, elsewhere, maybe. The one you're referring to, possibly it's not, so. It's not part of my plan, but it doesn't mean it's.
No, is
yeah,
it,
you said that the signal project is taking a long time, it's actually really fast in the sense of like how DOT works. Even though that you guys have been talking about the bypass and all these roundabout signals for like 30 years, I mean. The plan was like what adopted by council in 2023, and then it's getting engineered, which is in the right way process, and engineering process takes. So if you get the funding in September 30th and that appropriation bill, I mean, this would be one of the fastest projects ever to happen from 2023 to like, it had getting built in 2028.
I mean, I appreciate
So-
that, I'm just a fellow parent,
Yeah.
I'm concerned about my kid,
Yeah.
right, for the next 2 years, that's what I'm most
Yeah.
concerned
I
about.
just wanted to set that, like, it is a pretty fast project, but I understand much of the fact that, yeah, it feels like it's taking forever, because it's been needed in Warren for a very long time. Yeah. It just took till 2023 for any real action.
One thing,
Just-
sorry.
just on that, like, just to be clear, in 2023, like, the town and the council finally said. We wanna work with MDOT to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Which previously the story had been, this is a problem we cannot solve, there's nothing we can do, and. I think everyone's in agreement, we're not gonna do much to change the volume of traffic driving through town, but we can absolutely improve pedestrian safety, hence why we refresh our traffic study and finally. came to this point where we said, yes, we're in, we want signals in town. But it is gonna take a while.
Very good.
One thing to note about, what we talked about at one of the committee meetings related to state roads that are located within the urban compact and less, and maybe Dakota's still on, you can correct me if I'm wrong, less stringent requirements for installing crossings and think associated stuff, for lack of a better term. For example, like at that Norton Main crossing, I don't see why we couldn't put in some delineator posts and instead of just striping that one spot that's on the north side of the crossing, something vertical there that drivers see better to give you a little more refuge, short
Yeah.
crossing. I think there's possibilities that can happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, there were.
Provided we like get an implementation team together and like start getting actual small projects out to bid or whatever otherwise needs to happen and approved. But I know my intentions to push that forward.
So let's see, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Sorry, just two quick questions. So for North Street with your proposal, you guys haven't done a study tracking traffic yet, or you have?
No, there's no specific analysis.
It's just like perfect match, yeah. And then looking at the breakdown that you guys have with the different dollar cents and everything and seeing crosswalks mentioned a lot. It's not kind of expanding on what type of crosswalk is it, because the $1 sign that matches all the crosswalks is under 50,000. Is there like, will we get more of a breakdown of what types of crosswalks I suggest for that?
There should be some indication of what the recommended improvement is at the crosswalk in the notes.
Okay.
Columns.
Okay.
So if you zoom in, we should be able to see that, like I think with each improved crosswalk, we suggested a flashing beacon or bump outs or something. And it was just flashing beacon would be less than 50,000. Or
Yeah, just
flashing beacons.
recent roads on flashing beacons are roughly 25,000.
Yeah.
For the setup.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, I was wondering just about the relative costs of some of the other sort of, like even on the demonstration project ideas, like. Is a speed cushion a permanent solution, or can you do that as a temporary
It could be
solution?
temporary, yeah. Yeah, the image that was shown of the speed cushions, those are these temporary units that are basically, installed into the roadway temporarily. That's what,
the summer.
yeah, for summer, for whatever,
Take time.
I mean, that's what Maine DOT did. On Route 1, for instance, and some of those are temporary. You can go to a Google map and you can actually see, what it looks like.
Well,
Yeah.
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 Lights are expensive.
Yeah, no,
So temporary is ideal if you can make it work, but if you can do permanent ones.
Yeah, I mean, allowing, you can do permanent speed humps.
I was asking if that was the reason, that's what I was, so it is.
I mean, I might have this wrong, but my understanding is that project Route 1 was more of a demonstration project. They wanted to see what the traffic calming and the pedestrian improvements at the school, how it functions for a shorter period of time, a season.
Get some information.
Exactly, to evaluate it, see how well it's used, see if it actually is slowing traffic, improving safety outcomes, etc. So that my understanding that was the point of the project.
And in lieu of, having a study or an engineer say, oh, yeah, it should do this. You can go out and do a demo, get anecdotal information on the very street and evaluate, okay, should we now invest whatever it is for a permanent, this as a permanent solution? So you really have like hard data for your very specific case versus studies show, you know what I mean?
absolutely.
So I had Money pull up the next step slide, so I think what would make sense for the council is we need to take a formal step to adopt the recommendations of the plan, which I feel like there's no reason we couldn't do that at our next council meeting. And then have some type of discussion at our next council meeting about these additional next steps. I think it'll be important for Jennifer to be involved and perhaps maybe Jay, we can ask Jay to come to join us for that. Jay is our public works director. So we can start to kind of put some plans around those later next steps. Does that work
I
for?
think it makes sense, that's police chief, too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can ask to put this on the agenda and invite the police chief and Jay to hopefully join us for that conversation. And we can request that the manager get the report to Jay and the police chief ahead of time if they have it yet.
They're both on.
They're both pretty super. So I think that is probably what makes the most sense for immediate next steps, is the council will adopt the plan, and then we'll start tackling some of these items and figure out what our go forward approach is for the remaining stuff. Thank you for the very specific next steps. Does anyone have any other questions or
Well,
comments?
yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, no, I think it's a good plan. I like the demo projects that were laid out. I do think that I'm wanting to say on the folks here, like. I mean, I think if there are low cost ideas and opportunities that we can, because. This is sort of a townwide concern. No, we're not gonna address this really in the rural areas at this point, but I do know it's a townwide concern, speed, safety. And I do think I would like to have more investigation of what we can do in some of the areas, just surrounding downtown, or what works and doesn't work. I mean, it's like an experiment, really, which is what the demonstration projects are. And, more, I guess what I'm saying is, I'd like to pursue as many of those as we theoretically can, without inconveniencing, a lot of people, if possible, so.
Yeah, I think this, the plan sets the backbone for guiding some sort of team to then build an actual implementation plan and decide what do we need, what do we need to do prior to implementing this recommendation, this recommendation, this recommendation, and make those, there is the cost metric dollar sign or whatnot. But in my opinion, that next step would be for that team to then investigate each one and create a plan and put it into multi-year budget too, because there's gonna be some that obviously can't be done this year or next year, but we should not sit on them until we should start knowing that they're coming, knowing what their eventual costs are going to be, knowing yada yada, basically I should do something. Because, as you know.
Yeah, well, we have TIF funding, we talked about impact fees. But have people used impact fees for these types of improvements? And we have not adopted impact fees now, we have an impact.
Yeah, I think so. I don't have the specific examples, but.
Penn has a bicycle pedestrian impact fee that they use.
Okay. How about John or Jeff online?
Is there anyone raising hands or anything? For those on phone, here's an opportunity for you to chime in if you would like.
I'm good with getting it on the calendar for the 14th hour.
Cool, thank you, John.
Good, I've just been listening in because I've been driving, so I've not been able to, wasn't planning on providing a lot of input, but it's been a good discussion.
Thanks, Jeff. Last chance, anyone have any other questions or things they want to discuss in the room? For those of you that are part of the Active Committee, Sam, Paul, Phil, I'm forgetting your name right now, thank you. And everyone who participated, thank you. Thank you so much for all the hard work. We will have this on our next agenda, July 14th, where we'll look to adopt this plan in its entirety. And then also we should have some more information on the MDOT traffic light information, hopefully at our next council meeting too, for anyone who's planning it. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for your input.
Thanks, Phil, great job.
Yeah, thank you, Phil.